All right. It says, I think it says we're live, Jab, but I can't tell if we are or not. Can someone verify that we're like actually live right now? That would be nice. Can
Yeah,
someone
probably need to wait a few seconds for it to go through. And it
probably
looks
wait a
like the
few
stream's
seconds?
starting. There we go.
Oh yeah, live now. Awesome. Hey guys, and welcome to Question and Answer, episode 15. I'm your host, C.S. Joseph. We also have Jab, our amazing co-host.
Mm-hmm.
Tell the audience how you're doing, Jab.
I'm doing okay. Let's just say I bit my tongue, so I sound a little bit different, but please don't hold it against me.
Yeah. I said to him that he needs to bite his tongue because he was getting pretty sassy, and he actually did it
Uh-huh.
literally.
Yeah. Well, this is what happens when you do what you gotta do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I
Keep
got
on the
my
hustle.
military haircut because it will all grow back in like a week. So
Right.
I get it shaved on the side as much as I can because I know it just comes back like straight up. There's really not much I could do about that. So let's get this little closer if we can.
Well, yeah, I'm doing what I gotta do, so you can do what you gotta do.
Yeah, definitely. We're doing question and answer tonight. This is episode 15. Doing something a little bit different, although the microphone's a little in the way to see. But yeah, we have a new format tonight. We're doing platinum and then Patreon priority, super chats, YouTube and Discord. Discord technically has higher priority than YouTube, so we're going to be answering your questions for a long while here, and hopefully we'll be able to get through that pretty relatively easy. And just so you guys know, from a Patreon standpoint, we just launched it, and wow, that flicker is crazy. Maybe it's something to do with that candle in the background there.
Just put out the candle.
We just launched it, yeah. And wow, gotta love that feedback or hearing myself and whatnot. Uh, Please mute all the people. I'd appreciate it. Anyway, that being said, so we launched Patreon. Great. And we have these two tiers that impact our Q&A session, which is awesome. And I think hopefully the power does not run out here because some of the lights are flickering because it's got a huge rainstorm I'm in the middle of right now. But be that as it may, basically, if you're a patron and you're a platinum level and you ask a question, your question gets moved immediately to first in line, basically. And then we have priority questions. So if you're a patron, and I don't remember which tier it is specifically, if you could like enlighten me on that one, Jab or Nova, I'd appreciate
I
it.
think priority is silver.
It might be silver. I think it is silver. If you're silver tier, I believe on Patreon. If you ask a question, well, then we'll answer your question. And I think we actually have the question feed right here on the show for you to actually under the Patreon Q&A overlay, which is cool. Yes, we're using overlays now and like trying to be like more professional and stuff. So then obviously the YouTube super chats, which we're going to be keeping track of, and I think we've probably already gotten one, but we'll get to that in a second. But yeah. So with that in mind, I think we're going to get to our first question now, which comes from one of our platinum patrons now. So
Yep.
let's see here. If I could
You gonna
show
put up a
everyone.
picture?
Yep, I'm going to put up the picture. Awesome. So, Periani, one of our more prominent members of the CSJ community, produced this diagram for us to check out. And basically, his question is, if the above is true, is the bottom also true? And I really like this diagram. So let's kind of go through it at the top. So when led by the hero, it's the ego. It has optimism, greater FPS, etc. And then you have hero, child, parent, and then he has something called the anima. Now, the anima, also known as the animus, is basically what people refer to as the inferior function, right? I just don't really use that terminology very much. The reason why is because the subconscious itself maintains a male or female kind of like it has its own, it's the opposing gender of the ego, basically. So if your ego is male and you're a male person, that means you have a female subconscious, right? So I'm an ENTP ego, but I have an ISFJ woman as my subconscious, basically. My knight in shining armor is basically like a woman in armor with a big sword, and then she takes her armor off and then becomes like this rogue with daggers and stuff and uses poisons and is like an assassin. It's kind of cool. We could like totally make an MMO about this stuff. Maybe we will someday. I have no idea. But be that as it may, that's kind of how the anima works. That's where the terminology anima actually comes from, etc. So with that being said, we have the shadow is the unconscious. It's led by the nemesis, and the reverse shadow is led by the demon. Yes, that's correct. So I do agree with Periani's diagram here at the very top. So yeah, it's definitely what I would say. Yes, if this is true, yes, that is true. I maintain that. Now, is the bottom true? So we're looking at the same thing basically, except differently. It's trying to find out, hey, is it led by this? The only thing I disagree with is because it's essentially attaching the different archetypes of hero, parent, child, inferior to each of the four sides of the mind, basically. Now, calling the demon fourth side of the mind, or the superfluous ego, as we could see it right in there. I'm trying to read it because it's a little difficult for me to read. I wouldn't exactly call the superfluous ego itself like the animus itself, because the terminology animus is actually applied specifically to the subconscious to show or demonstrate that opposing gender. However, given the spirit with which this diagram was written, I actually do agree with Periani with his diagram, absolutely. And I like how he has a source of happiness. It's kind of like an optimistic child. Absolutely. It's just the terminology that's attached to the four sides of the mind I don't necessarily agree with, and I would have to research it a little bit more. But if this is true, he says at the bottom, then we can apply our knowledge of the Jungian archetypes to not just the individual functions, but to the whole personality types. Yes, we can. Because there's actually a whole lot more levels. I mean, even the hero function itself, or any of the functions, has like 4 components each, and you kind of have to look at it like someone else I was talking to, an INTJ woman, I think, and she's like, oh, it just weaves around like a double helix. Like, yeah, that's exactly what it does. It's kind of like a genome, basically, for the human soul, and that's basically how this entire system happens, right? So, excellent question by one of our platinum patrons. Jab, do you want anything you'd like to add to this?
Not really. I mean, I think you covered everything you needed to say.
Yeah. I think the bottom line is here is that what we could take away from this diagram specifically is that Periani's making the argument that while we have hero, parent, child, inferior, or anima or anima/animus for our top 4 cognitive functions within the personality of the ego itself, why can't we attach those archetype attitudes to each of the 4 sides of the mind? You can. The answer is yes, you can. Just let's use different terms to describe those interactions, because it's not exactly all the way, because of the conflict involving the anima animus applied to the subconscious being that opposing gender. But then again, like, it's also been interesting to see whether or not the superfluous ego has an opposing gender. There isn't very much research on that, so I'm not entirely sure how that would work. So we'll have yet to see on that a little bit more. I think that would be an excellent discussion to have, maybe with John Beebe. Actually, I think if we could actually figure that out, or at least some of those who have worked with John Beebe, Dr. John Beebe, that would be an excellent discussion for sure. So I'm gonna put this thing away, and there we go. And
all right. Next question
we have
comes from
We have the Patreon Q&A one, right?
Yeah. I saw it.
Okay.
Next question comes from Byte in the Patreon Q&A, and she asks, "How should an INFJ break the ice with an INFP?"
Or with an NFP. Okay,
Sorry, yes, with
so
an INFP.
basically, I would say, wow, the light is flickering in here like crazy. Hopefully, we don't lose power. That would be really embarrassing. Uh, okay, so based on that, uh, how do you break the ice? It's really when it comes to an NFP or an NFJ, regardless of your gender, it's the NFJ's responsibility to basically initiate the relationship. It's their responsibility to break the ice because they're the introverted intuitive. NI users have the responsibility of initiation, regardless of whatever gender they are, because some people typically believe men should be initiating with women. That's not necessarily true. If you're an NJ and you're initiating with an NP, or if you're trying to have a relationship with an NP man, if you're an NJ, regardless if you're male or female, it's your responsibility to really initiate the relationship. That's just how it works in intuitive land. When it's SP versus SJ, it's SPs who should be initiating with SJs by and large, and that's typically how it goes. From regardless of your gender or your age or whether or not you're extroverted or introverted, it doesn't matter, right? So with that being said, make sure that you go out of your way to state your intentions. It's really just state your intentions and recognize also men typically, if you're trying to have a relationship with an NFP, and it could be either like a romantic relationship, it could be like a friendship, etc. Regardless of how it's supposed to be, let's. Oh, that flicker is like super annoying right now.
Right, the same for you.
Yeah, I know, right? No, so how to go about doing it is just again state your intentions, but do it in such a way where it doesn't really make them feel uncomfortable. You want them to feel comfortable. You might want to
Right.
wait for the opportune moment, get your timing down perfect, and make sure that they're comfortable. Or seek to make them comfortable first before you state your intentions. Use your extroverted sensing inferior, aspire with it. Pay attention to some of the things. And if they're an NFP, you have the option of actually waiting around, spending time observing them with SE inferior, find out the things that they like, and then go get those things for them and bring it to them as a gift and be like, hey, I got this for you because I know you like it. That just shows you're thoughtful, and then state your intentions afterwards. You could do this with like Starbucks. You listen to them or find out someone like with someone at work or whatever. You find out from a coworker what their favorite Starbucks is, etc. Or at least you go with a whole group, or you take their order one day and then you bring that order to them randomly, like a week later or something and then state your intentions or be like, hey, I want to take you out to coffee sometime. I hear you talk about this subject, make it about that subject, and then things will naturally go from there. It's more efficient to do it that way and focus on giving them a good experience and doing what they like. And then after you've at least done those things, then you state your intentions, right? So that would be the process that I would follow for answering that for Byte.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that sounds about right. It sounds like somewhat my experience, but whatever.
Not your experience, Jeb?
No, I mean, don't get me wrong, I've had women approach me before, but like that's how my most successful interactions have occurred.
Fair enough.
Going on, we have a super chat here from Jordan Holstein, and he says, "Is it possible to actually access the unconscious functions? It would be nice to know what SE even is."
Yes, it is possible to access the unconscious functions. Anyone can do that. You have to develop the unconscious side of your mind in as much as you have to develop your subconscious and those functions in order to actually be able to develop your superego one day, as is the path to enlightenment and total integration of each aspect of your soul, etc. In order to do that. Now, with that being said, you really need to get over your worry, basically, and be less concerned about things. And you could do this by having relationships with other human beings to kind of like, cover those bases for you so you're more secure about it. And then you'll be able to actually utilize your unconscious side of your mind without being so pessimistic, etc. Because, you know, you still use your unconscious all day, every day anyway. Like all 8 of those cognitive functions are still going. And if you haven't watched the episode in season 1, breaking down the 8 cognitive spectra, I recommend that you actually do. So that you can kind of have an idea of how the frames per second work and how all those functions are actually working simultaneously. And you're just kind of more bleeding into the other sides of your mind in a healthy way. Or you could do like a hard switch and things just kind of flip around. And you're still accessing the 4 functions of your ego, kind of like an anchor, as you're off in La La Land or Narnia, flying around, saving the world in your subconscious, or maybe even in your unconscious, depending on, your happiness versus maturity, etc. Depending on what side of the mind you're in, to be able to use those 4 4 cognitive functions. But again, to be able to access the unconscious in a healthy way, without necessarily being exposed to abuse or trauma in your life. It's all about developing your maturity, and you develop your maturity through through dealing with worry and concern. And when you're worried, you focus on not being as worried anymore. Like, how do you do that? Well, you really need life experience. The more life experience you have, the less worried you will be, essentially, because it's like, oh, I've been through this before. I can get through this again, kind of a situation, right? And that helps you drop your worry and your concern and allows you to use your unconscious functions more often and in a healthy way and not necessarily in a traumatic way. Because remember, the unconscious exists to try to bring us maturity and help us as human beings mentally develop maturity. And that's why we do it, etc.
Okay. We don't have another super chat, do we? That person deleted their message. So we're going to go back to the Discord questions, and the top one comes from Sir Ball, and he asks, why do you think INJs are so private? Do you recommend anything for these types to mitigate this?
Well, they're very private because they've usually been taken advantage of by somebody. It's their extrovert intuition nemesis, their 5th function, the top of their unconscious side of their mind. INJs are very private because if they reveal private things about themselves, they're concerned that that person may become treacherous and then screw them over one day, and that could be a serious issue. Like that could be a major problem. So yeah, I mean, you're not just going to go out there and tell everyone your secret, Shab. And especially like when it comes to like INTJs and they have that, I mean, even INFJs have paranoia just like INTJs do. It's just not as bad as it is for INTJs. It's still pretty high though, because they have extrovert intuition nemesis. But they don't have that TE parent pessimism to go along with it, right? So
right.
There's a lot of disadvantages that go along with it. So based on that, it's really important to make sure that if people are stating their intentions, verify those intentions. That way you don't have to be so worried about them. And also don't do that SI demon thing where you're comparing past experiences that you've had with people with this like new person and their new intentions towards you. That's not fair. Don't judge them that way. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't judge them that way. That's wrong, right? Why would you go about doing that, right? You can't do that. But they're private because INJs basically start out thinking that, people are just, because SE Inferiors just naturally believes that people are loyal to them. If the person shows themselves friendly to them initially, it's like, oh, this person's friendly to me. Oh, this person must like the experience I'm giving them. Oh, this person must be loyal to me. Oh, I can trust this person. No, that's not actually true. And then as over time, that extrovert intuition nemesis becomes jaded because SE Inferior was hit too many times because the people that they thought were loyal to them are not actually loyal to them. That's the issue. That's the problem, right? So how do we solve that problem? Well, By paranoia. The paranoia is utilized through extrovert intuition nemesis to protect the INJ. And this is why they are very private, essentially. That's why they behave privately.
Okay. Next question is. Oh, do we have a super chat? Sorry, I might have missed it. Nope. All right. Periani's in the chat. We answered your question, so maybe at the end of the stream you might need to go back, sir. Anyway, next question is: would be interested to know your opinion about the works of the Dave Superpowers channel from Objective Personality. Haven't seen all their videos because they are too short and poorly structured. Whoops. From an educational view. My loose impression is they're overcomplicating things. For example, in a recent video, they claimed it's almost impossible for you to know your own type just by yourself. What do you think?
I think I don't really know much about Dave's superpowers or what he does. I don't really have much of an opinion. I watched like 4 of his videos years ago, and 3 or 4 of them, and that's it. And it was mostly just talking about the top 4 cognitive functions, and I didn't really talk about shadow functions or anything beyond there. So I didn't really utilize him as a source in my own education in terms of Jungian analytical psychology or depth typology. I haven't really done that. So I'm not entirely sure how to go about doing that per se. I can't really offer much of an opinion because I just don't know the guy. I don't. Yeah, he's been successful, but he's been doing this for years. Right. I've been only doing this since February 2018. Our 1-year anniversary is coming up, but yeah, I'm not really sure how to go about answering that question, Jeb.
Fair enough. I mean, if you want to reword that question and ask something a bit more specific, we'll eventually get to it. But we've got quite a lot of questions, and right now we have a super chat from Edwin Ortiz, and he asks, "My nephew might be an ESTP, so I'd like to make sure he has strong values. Thoughts on being able to / how to nurture a strong FE in an ESTP child?"
So you can't give an ESTP values. That's actually an FI thing. So in order to nurture FE in an ESTP child, you just go volunteer with that child and take him volunteering and help people. And put him in charge of something at like some kind of event, or have him be a bell ringer with a Salvation Army at Christmas time, or do help at a blood bank or one of those like mobile blood collection center truck things that they have, where they take people's blood basically anywhere when they deploy, usually in like a grocery store parking lot or at a hospital, etc. Volunteering for picking up trash, those kinds of things. Community service. Take the ESTP out for community service, essentially. I think that's one of the reasons why society has, utilized community service as a punishment for criminals, because a lot of, the STPs who happen to be criminals, I'm not saying all STPs are criminal. No, don't jump to that conclusion. But they find it very therapeutic. STP, NFJ criminals in that quadra, they do find community service actually very therapeutic, and it actually helps rehabilitate them so they don't, have repeated offenses, etc., because they see that they're actually contributing to something. And there was some research on that, like from a bunch of years ago, that I read about that, which was really fascinating to me. But I don't remember the specific. I read it in a book actually. But one of my mentors discussed something similar to that effect. But be that as it may, when you're looking at this ESTP child, go volunteer, go do something, help people. You want to treat him kind of like an INFJ and use his subconscious, help him develop his subconscious, help him just be like, hey, I'm doing this, you're coming with me, right? You need to help me today, and we are going to go volunteer. We're going to go pick up trash. We're going to help the blood bank. We're going to go to the food bank. Those types of things. That is what we are doing, right? And anyone can be involved. Anyone can do that, etc., right? So that's basically how it works. That's basically what I would recommend for developing extroverted feeling within an ESTP. Jeb?
Whoops. Anyway,
What happened?
so you finished answering that question? I don't know. You just left the live stream channel for some reason.
I tried not to, I didn't do anything, but fair enough. At least I'm back. Maybe the
Yeah,
voice
all
dropped.
good. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. All right. So did you finish answering that question? I can go on the next one.
Yeah, I did. Basically saying take the ESTP to develop FE child, go volunteer with that ESTP. Treat them
All
like
right.
an INFJ.
Next question comes from one of our favorite members, Bite, and she asks, "Hi Chase, do you have any suggestions how an INFJ female can survive in a software engineering workplace? I'm constantly told I have to initiate, start projects on my own, and make my own required documents, which stresses me out a lot because I feel so lost and I don't know how to start them usually. I've asked for help/guidance, but there's not that much movement. Thanks for your suggestions."
My first suggestion is get a new job. It is unfair for the workplace to expect an INFJ software engineer to produce so much paperwork or so much documentation. That's TE trickster. That's not going to go anywhere. Plus, they're a finisher type. If you're going to if you're a business owner and you're leveraging a software engineer who's an INFJ, and which by the way, INFJs are some of the best software engineers that you could find because their TI child just absolutely dominates logic. When they're like doing programming, etc. Super, super mega important, right? Based on that, you need to make sure that you make it clear that when you're getting hired to these organizations that while you're an amazing software engineer and you have a great portfolio, documentation is not my thing. So I would recommend there's some software out there that when you're actually doing some coding and whatnot, it'll do documentation for you and it'll keep track of your comments, etc. Maybe it's like a Git technology. I'm not really familiar with that, but there's a lot of tools out there that could be utilized to assist. Not only that, you can maybe even use like a prototyping software, like for example Adobe XD for application prototyping, and create your prototype, and then okay, I made my prototype, guys. That's my documentation. There you go. But otherwise, what point is there? So is documentation like just some scaffolding or just some like code for the code? I mean, when I'm writing code, why do I have to write documentation too? I mean, I could understand putting comments in there to pay attention to that code and to say like, okay, this subroutine does this switch does this does this case does this loop does this. Okay, sure, fair enough. But there's really no point to it, especially for an INFJ. Other coders, like maybe an INTJ, they're great at documentation. They can handle that. But honestly, it's not the INFJ's job to be producing all that side documentation. Quite frankly, that organization sounds like that they're either not organized, they do not know how to approach HR properly, and they probably are lacking knowledge of cognition of their employees and creating a work environment that is not conducive to them being productive. And I'm trying not to be a hypocrite here because, like, the people that work for me, I try to utilize them in the ways that they are best utilized for, instead of like expecting them to, be this, square screw trying to, fit in like a round hole. It's not going to work. You know what I'm saying? Just from that standpoint, communicate what you need. Put up your boundaries, and if they are not going to allow, if they're going to continue to break your boundaries, leave that organization and find somewhere else. You can't find like really good INFJ software engineers do not grow on trees. They just don't. And you could easily get rehired elsewhere, especially if you're looking while you're hired. Don't just quit and then try to look for a job. That's never a wise decision. actually just secretly look for a job, even if it makes you, the INFJ, feel guilty that you're doing it. Just ignore your guilt. Like, seriously, do what works. Don't do the right thing. Do what works. Use your ESTP subconscious and do what works. Don't do the right thing, because if you do, you're going to screw yourself. So ignore your guilt. Go look for another job on the side, and then in the interview process, make it clear, hey, documentation is not my thing. I'm amazing at code, but I'm not really good at documentation. So unless you have software that's going to help me document, don't expect me to do it. Oh yeah, don't worry, we have the software. Or, oh yeah, don't worry, we have other people on staff that can handle that for you. Great, thank you. And then get on with them. Otherwise, enforce your boundaries and hope for the best. That's all I could offer.
Okay. All right, well, I'm going to suggest you answer these next few questions rather briefly, because this person has actually asked like 4 questions in a row. So,
Okay.
firstly, start off with passion, interest, hobby that can become a method of earning money that would lead to a better subconscious development and make me happy. I was thinking about dancing. I never did it. I thought SI remembers the movements and any imitates the others as they dance. It will be okay. Or not having SC in the ego is not it. What are your suggestions? So this is an ISTJ male.
So,
So should an ISTJ male use dancing as a way to develop his subconscious?
an ISTJ male to use dancing to develop subconscious. Yeah, that would work. That would work pretty well, actually. If you ever watched, so whoever asked this question, there's this show on Netflix a long time ago called LXD, the League of Extraordinary Dancers. If you haven't checked that out, I recommend it. But there is a few ISTJ dancers that were absolutely dominating in it, and ISFJ is also. SJs in general can dominate dance pretty well. It's unbelievable the amount of self-discipline that they can exude with their introverted sensing, their super high introverted sensing, to be able to meet the needs and do the mimicry, to be able to have things well choreographed. Yeah, absolutely, definitely something to do to develop your subconscious. Please do it. It can be absolutely incredible. It's also something I would recommend to NPs as well, intuitive perceivers. Definitely something I would recommend to NPs to help develop their subconscious, is to utilize dance. So yes.
Okay, and then he asks, what would you say for something like this? A man who achieves female archetypes and a woman who achieves male archetypes. If we would juxtapose them, how would the relationship look like? How would it work?
Can you ask that in a different way? Like,
I think what this person's saying is, if a woman achieves king, warrior, magician, lover, and a man achieves queen, matron, something lover, wise lady lover, whatever the female ones are. Sorry, I forgot what they are. So if a man achieves the female mature archetypes and a woman achieves the male mature archetype, how would a relationship between those two people work?
I honestly can't really say, because I don't see how it's possible for a female to reach king, warrior, magician, lover, especially like when you're looking at the magician itself is specifically the archetype. It specifically is for developing other men and with manly things and helping them reach king and warrior. So I don't think that the basis of the logical basis of the question itself is not actually something that could exist in reality. Therefore, I can't really provide an answer that's not void to begin with.
Okay. All right. Well, he's actually asked another 2 questions, but we got a super chat. And this person asks, Aiden Weissnis asks, if you had 4 islands, one with 4 one with 4 SJs, one with 4 SPs, one with NTs, and one with NF, which would be most likely to survive? Which would be the happiest, and which would get along the best?
Which would be the most likely to survive? Which would be the happiest? And which would... are the islands next to each other, or are they completely separate and closed off from each other?
I'm going to assume separate.
Oh, gonna assume separate. I honestly can't really say for sure, other than like the SP island is the one that will likely survive the most. Yeah, SPs probably, because of their ability as artisans to manipulate the physical environment around them. They would have the highest chance of survival for sure. And there's like a 50-50 chance between the NTs and the NFs because they have some SP types within them as well that could assist them. SJs, kind of, sort of, they could as well. I mean, they have SP related shadows, but again, it all depends. That's way too broad of a question for me to answer. So because of how broad it is, I would just have to put my money on SPs to start. And after that, it's all very subjective, and I need more information to answer it.
Right. Okay. So going back to the questions from the ISTJ guy. How to deal with paranoid SE nemesis as ISTJ. It's really annoying. When I have to get somewhere, all my clothes must create harmony, and sometimes it takes too long that I'm late. In public, when something isn't as I like, for example, airblowed my styled hair, I am correcting it even though it will dispel again soon, and it pisses me off. Or I have this tendency to pull the phone out to look in his mirror and check everything is in place. Okay, before anyone makes fun of me for not being able to read, that was the grammar of the question. So,
Okay. So they're asking what to do about SE Nemesis, basically.
yeah, how to deal with it? How can you overcome it?
Basically doing what she's already doing. You
But
have
it's
to
a he.
develop additional. Oh, he. Okay. Sorry. Grammar, right?
Yeah.
Grammar. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So based on that, it's
Mm-hmm.
SE Nemesis is more than just clothing. I like the clothing example, but it's also like being worried about the physical environment around you, right? Uh, like everything has its place, but really, how do you defeat SE Nemesis? You make it your ally, and so watch season 16, episode 5 for this. But just make SE Nemesis your ally, right? And utilize it as an ally to defeat external factors, not necessarily internal. If it's internal, you just have to use self discipline and just comply with the demands of the Nemesis function, your SE Nemesis, with your SI hero, and force yourself, even though you don't like it, to fix things and make sure everything is in place. That doesn't mean you have obsessive compulsive disorder, as most people would claim, but that just means that you're making sure that you're not worried that you're coming off visually negative or giving other people a bad experience or pressuring them too much, etc. Not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing because you yourself don't like being pressured. You yourself don't like
Right.
having a bad experience from other people. If you just let that go by the wayside, then you become a hypocrite, and that's not recommended. So really just utilize self-discipline and make the SE Nemesis your ally and not necessarily a nemesis. And you can learn that in season 16, episode 5. But otherwise, just keep on doing what you keep on doing. Now, you can not necessarily be as concerned about those things, but you would also have to recognize that you yourself would not have to be so judgmental towards other people when they give you a bad experience, or when they look ugly, or they are not, making sure that they're, well done in terms of their getup as well. So it
Mm-hmm.
goes both ways, is my point.
Okay. We actually had a super chat come in while you're answering that,
Okay.
and that comes from Max G94, and he asks, "Any thoughts from the laws of human nature and how it relates to cognitive functions slash 16 types?"
Uh, I cannot offer any thoughts because I have not finished reading that book. I actually had to move a
Ooh.
few books ahead of it in my queue to be able to had higher priority given the situation that I was dealing with since Thanksgiving till like recently. But I have a couple books ahead of it, and then I will be getting into finishing up Laws of Human Nature. Uh, I have been told by other people, though, that you could potentially, apply Jungian analytical psychology directly to that book. So I'm very curious to see what that is, but that's definitely something we're going to have to get back to. So yeah, you know what? I may actually just do a full episode on that in the future. Quite frankly, on the laws of human nature, just to produce some kind of analysis for it. And I think I might do that in season 17, especially when we're talking about children's upbringing, etc., and as well as adolescence. So
Okay. Um, questions for CS Joseph. Let's see what we've you. And this is the final question from this lad, and he asks, "Getting to know new people. How to lead a conversation being an ISTJ. It is natural for me that I am talking about what I found out lately or about the weather. This is amazing. Yesterday was 19 Celsius, and today is only 6 Celsius. XD. Familiarizing someone is how to start, what topics to move, so as to not bother the other side. Generally, I do not like to talk because I do not have anything I can talk about. I realize that the interlocutor, what I have to say is not interesting."
Okay. So this ISTJ is asking for what subjects could I bring up with people in general in order to cause familiarity so I could potentially make friends out of them? Is that basically what he's asking?
Yes.
Okay. So based on that, read. Read books.
He left the channel again.
I'm in here. I'm in the channel. What are you talking about?
Welcome back. You just rejoined, sir.
Weird. Huh. Okay. Okay. So, from an ISTJ standpoint, you need to read. Like, read all the time. Read books. Be aware of current events as much as possible. We have an ISTJ on our team, and he's constantly aware of current events, and it is amazing. It's like he's my own personal. I don't want to say CNN because he'd be offended, but he knows things consistently and is always up to date on anything current events related. Be up to date on those things. Read constantly. Read the newspaper. Read the news. Read books all the time. Fill yourself with experiences and do things for yourself that make you happy and things that you like, and then share those things with other people so that the SE users in your life will be like, wow, I see what you're doing. I want to do that too. And then it ends up developing desire for you because of what you are doing, right? So that would be how I'd answer that question, Jab.
Okay. Let's see what we've got for you next. And this is a question from someone called I Am Not Sorry. When to use the same versus when to use different interaction styles. Still not entirely sure how same interaction styles versus different works in conversations and whatnot.
Okay, can you ask that again in a different way, though?
Okay, let me think. So I think what this person's asking is, so with respect to interaction styles, so this person's talking about when to use the different sides of your mind, I think.
Oh, is that each side of the mind has their own interaction style?
So when to use the same versus different interaction styles. So I think what this person's saying is, when should you use an interaction style to get along with someone?
You do all the time. You do all the time, and if you're emulating another side of of the mind, that side of the mind or that particular four cognitive function set has its own interaction style. It's its own person, basically. It has its own interaction style, it has its own temperament, it has its own things, everything. So, of course, if you're going to do cognitive emulation, you'd have to do that for sure. Like, obviously, right?
Okay. We do have another super chat from Aidan Weissnes, and he asked, with SJs and SPs, their temperaments are named after the second and fourth letters, but NT and NFs are named after the second and third letters. Why aren't there columns of MPs and NJs?
Because it's interesting because the MBTI actually released a grid like that years ago where it was organized that way. But we do it by temperament and we do it by interaction style. And we do that specifically to help actually classify or how to type people through temperaments. So we use the temperament matrix according to Stephen Montgomery. You could read that in his book, People Patterns. You can also do Dr. Linda Behrens and look at her approach to temperaments as well, since they kind of go hand in hand with each other. And then from there, you also look at Dr. Linda Behrens' interaction styles, and that's why we have the type grid set up the way that it's set up. Otherwise, you can't mix up NJs with NJs because they all have different temperaments and they all have different interaction styles. Not exactly fair, right? So, so yeah, there's a different interaction style for each, but half of them have the same temperament, the other half of them don't. SPs and SJs are a bit more uniform, but the intuitives are a bit more mixed up, and that's why we have the grid that set up that way for that purpose.
Perfect. We didn't have another super chat, did we? No. All right, next question is, how can TE Trickster keep up with large amounts of material taught in college when college is TE heavy? Perhaps a series on how the types learn/study best.
Basically, you want to surround yourself with good TE users to learn from. Hopefully, you get professors that are TE users and get a lot of input. It's just immerse yourself, basically immerse your TI in basically anything related to that subject that you're actually studying. Now, sometimes you're forced to study subjects you don't want to study, which makes it even harder. But you just have to really give yourself the time and develop a really good process of study to be able to go through all of your subjects. Because if you're a movement type, and I'm assuming this is an INFJ, not an ISFJ, right? You want to make sure you have a good process. Now, if you are an ISFJ with TE Trickster, okay, that's different. You'll want to focus on the outcome, what is the goal, basically, and then develop an individual study process for each goal. And then as a result of that, you could get through it. It really comes down to when that you're focusing on your outcome or developing a process that could handle any outcome, right? And or if you have trouble, surround yourself with TE users, befriend TE users, have relationships with TE users, because those TE users will help you think through all those anomalies and all of those difficulties in an academic environment. Or get a career change, or go to a school that's not really TE related, maybe performing arts, etc. There's a lot of different aspects out there that you could look at. But even then, performing arts can be very TE, because even songs have structures and there's data points, etc., and reference points. So
Right.
it's kind of a pick your poison scenario. Academia is not really structured, and they are biased against TE tricksters, and there's not really much I can do about that or say how to compensate it. You either have to participate knowing that you have that disadvantage, or you choose not to participate, quite frankly.
Okay. All right, we got another question here. I'm a little confused as to why you adamantly say INTPs and INFPs are incompatible with each other. Surely their shared NE and SI in the same slots means they experience the world in a very similar way, while their hero functions both satisfy each other's inferior function. As an INTP myself, INFPs are by far my favorite type. They put in as much thought as I do and come up with much more ethical answer comparative to the pragmatic solution is come up with. Okay. I think he means I come up with. The laid-back nature of INFPs makes them easier to be around than any other type, and they are also skilled at guiding me through the notorious FE bomb. Could you elaborate as to why you don't think these will get along?
Well, I mean, if that's what this person likes to do, then that's what they like to do. I'm not going to get in the way of that. Like, seriously, I'm not going to get in the way of that. But at the same time, like, it's just not going to work. That's not a one-size-fits-all solution for a marriage or a romantic or an intimate relationship. I do not recommend INPs with INPs. It's just not going to work. Because, for example, SI users in the bedroom, they like being on the bottom, typically. SE users in the bedroom typically like being on top. What happens when you put two people in the bedroom that both want to be on the bottom? You see what I'm saying? There's difficulty there. And I know I've said that before, and I know that triggers some people, but it is what it is. That's a fact. Like, it's a fact, guys. Because the SE user is responsible for giving other people a good experience. Whereas you have these INPs in a relationship, and they're both focused on what gives them a good experience? What makes both of them comfortable? And they're not seeking to comfort each other, they're just seeking to comfort themselves. Wow, that's a really good foundation to create a relationship on. No, it's not. Now, while they may be able to be emotionally available and meet each other's emotional needs with their like inferior functions versus hero functions, okay, yeah, maybe, but their perceiving functions have zero compatibility whatsoever. It's more of they end up just doing things shoulder to shoulder, but it's not a face to face relationship. It's a shoulder to shoulder relationship. That's not something I would recommend for an intimate relationship. No way. And one of the probably the only reason why these two types are able to like be with each other, because typically I notice it's really really strong in SI user plus SI user relationships. It's very strong with them, but both people who are SI users in an intimate relationship don't have much experience having intimacy with SE users. And because of that, they don't have any SI data from which to compare to in the past, which would have potentially, likely, prevented them from being interested and being with an SI user, a fellow SI user, because they would have remembered that, oh, this other relationship in the past would have actually been better than this one. I'm not going to waste my time. Or I'm not really interested in that, right? So they could have been two virgins and they could have gotten together. And this is why people make the argument as to, well, you shouldn't have sexual relations until you are, until you're married, because if you're a virgin, you don't have any information with which to compare to. Yeah, sure, okay, I get that. And if that's all these SI users ever knew, okay, yeah, then sure, in that context, potentially the relationship could work because they don't know any better. Because it's literally the ignorance is bliss argument. That's not useful. That's not helpful, okay? Because in the long run, that's not the truth. The truth is SE users need to be with SI users. That's it. That is a fact, especially in an intimate relationship setting.
Okay. So we got two super chats in quick succession. Let's start with the top one. Chase! What's the least compatible type you would date?
The least compatible type that I would date for myself.
There's a little bit extra. ESTP drawn to ENTP/INTP like a bug to light, although I know it's tops mediocre compatibility.
Yeah, it is mediocre compatibility. It's kind of neutral, but I really like STP women. I've always liked STP women, even though it's kind of neutral in compatibility land. And then also there's like that FE user guilt loop you got to deal with, which can be problematic. But especially since I am an FE child, and it'd be good luck trying to make an STP woman feel good about herself. Like, that's not going to happen. So instead, I just have to constantly pretend to, value her, basically pretend to validate her, etc., and tell her, I feel really good about you because you do this for me and you do this for me, even though that's not actually how I emotionally feel. I want someone else to say that to me, not the other way around, right? So it kind of like bends in on itself and gets all screwed up, etc. But in terms of relationships, I would probably avoid. It's definitely fellow NTPs. Like, they're like, why would I want to be in a relationship with an NTP woman or an INTP or an ENTP woman? Like, I don't. They could be like very attractive looking, and sure, as many women out there are very beautiful, and yeah, fair enough. But outside of that, could I actually have a relationship with them? No, because it would be like me being in a relationship with my sister. Like, that's how I see NTP women. They're like my cadre, my sisters in arms, basically. We're doing stuff shoulder to shoulder. We're getting things done. We're kicking ass, taking names. There's no room for a relationship there. We can't be intimate, and I would avoid being intimate. There's no way, because we're not able to meet each other's needs. That's the issue.
Right.
I have to be in a relationship where I'm able to meet her needs and she's able to meet my needs. Outside of that, it's just not going to happen.
Okay. Mr. Aiden Weissness did another super chat.
Awesome.
I kind of feel like Mr. Mr. Weissney should just become a patron, but
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. Mr. Wishneys, consider going to patreon.com/csjoseph with that shameless plug in there, if you know what I mean. And
Absolutely.
yeah, we are coin operated. Jab's new coin slot is working great.
Exactly.
Yep.
So the question Mr. Weissness asks is, if the layout of the grid is true, then why aren't SJs and SPs mixed up when NTs and NFs can find their most compatible types in their own column? But SJs and SPs have to cross columns.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. Well, okay, good point. So it's really because SPs they seek freedom and SJs are trying to give freedom. And SJs are seeking security and SPs are able to provide security. That's basically the reason right there. They're able to meet each other's needs cross temperament wise. SPs, they're trying to do what works and they're trying to seek somebody who does the right thing. They want to be paired up with somebody who does the right thing so that they have someone to cover all of the right thing bases because they're affiliative. And whereas the SJs who are affiliative, they have a lot more respect, and the SPs just fills them up with so like they feel full of life around the SPs. Like, wow, these people just do whatever they want. You know, I wish I could do whatever I want. I wish I had willpower like those people. And whereas the SPs look at the SJs and like, I wish I was as honorable and as dutiful as they were. You know, and they just see what's missing in themselves and the other person, and that's why they need to have relationships with each other, and that's why they're able to cross temperaments, etc. in terms of their highest compatibilities. Did I get out of the channel again?
Yeah, Domes keeps dragging you. Is there any way you can like bring up the Discord so you can
Yeah.
like? I think if it's minimized, it's gonna kick you out. I don't know why, but apparently.
Okay. I'll try not to keep it minimized as much as I can.
So yeah, actually, we have another super chat from Mr. Devon, and he asks,
Devon.
"Who are some well-developed ENTPs?"
Who are some famous, well-developed ENTPs?
Yeah.
Okay. Benjamin Franklin, hands down.
Benjamin.
Good old Benji.
What about C.S. Joseph?
C.S. Joseph. We're getting there, Jab. We're getting there.
We're getting there. Okay.
We're getting there. Howard Hughes, definitely would be a good example. If you like fiction, Klaus Michelson from the show The Originals, he's an ENTP, and of course his brother Elijah's an INFP, for example, and his sister Rebecca's an ISTJ. Very interesting way of putting a story together. And let's see, what other famous ENTPs? There's a lot of arguments out there that Socrates was actually an ENTP. A lot of rumors regarding that as well. And I even saw some like biblical scholars trying to make the arguments that John the Baptist was an ENTP, but I'm not entirely sure about that. I don't know that much about John the Baptist, etc. But there is like, cause he's obviously a starter interaction style, absolutely, and it's kind of interesting, archetypically speaking, that John the Baptist as the starter interaction style, and then Jesus and INFJ is the finisher interaction style. I find that very interesting how that works, but archetypically speaking. So, what are some other famous ENTPs, Jab? I know I'm forgetting like two more. Trying that I usually have off the top of my head. So I always tell people like Howard Hughes. I always tell people Benjamin Franklin. Like Tesla's an INTP. Say again.
Tony Stark from
Tony Stark.
Iron
Yeah.
Man?
Tony Stark and
Well,
Robert Downey
example.
Jr. Robert Downey Jr. himself is an ENTP, which is why he
Right.
fit perfectly with the role. Absolutely, absolutely perfect with the role. I mean, you can even watch that Charisma on Command channel on YouTube, and the guy who runs that channel is comparing Tony Stark to to Robert Downey Jr. and his charisma versus Captain America and Chris Evans and his charisma, and how they have completely different ways of doing things. And you can see the different ways of interactions and how they're like polar opposites with each other within the movies, because Chris Evans is an ISFJ and it's polar opposite with an ENTP, and it's a very interesting interaction between that. So I recommend watching that if you get a chance. I'm still here, Jeb, I promise.
Yeah, all good, all good. I just got a letter. Anyway, what was I saying?
You're on to the next question. Yeah.
Taj Marie in the patron Q&A. I almost missed it.
All right.
Taj Marie asks, I have a two-part question.
Okay.
First, when it comes to networking, many rules and guidelines for effective networking seem like they are affiliative and interest-based.
Yeah, I agree.
How can someone who is systematic and pragmatic adjust their interaction style, but yet remain authentic to oneself? Do they have to emulate, draw from subconscious? Or a combination of both? Lastly, is it possible for someone in a high-paced scenario such as... is it possible to type someone in a high-paced scenario such as networking, and how quickly?
It is possible. You have to get the most ideal results with typing somebody. You want to have a one-on-one interaction with them while also observing them from a distance as a third party, with them not interacting with you at all, to get the most data. So that way, because sometimes when you're in front of somebody, because I was like coaching somebody yesterday actually, and we're like, oh, hey, maybe, you're an ISTP, but they were cognitive transitioned into ISTP land. And it wasn't until they were more comfortable in the conversation as time went on, because they're an SI user, that it came to light that, oh, you're actually an ESTJ. You were just, stuck in your shadow because you were uncomfortable. And I'm not exactly the most comforting person because I have SE demon. Like, I don't really make people comfortable, let's be honest. And that's really hard for like an SJ type, especially in a one-on-one coaching scenario, to be able to do that. And especially if you're in a fast-paced environment, like a networking event, etc., that can be like really difficult, right? So how do you deal with that? You have to get multiple inputs of information, have that one-on-one interaction, but also observe them from a distance outside of not interacting them, while still able to like hear what they're talking about. That way you know what's up. That way you're getting all the correct information. Is just follow the type grid through interaction styles and temperaments. Now in season 17, we're about to release a quadras and cognitive axes analysis. We're going to be adding those two documents to the type grid document to create, the 4 ways to interpret the type grid on how to type people, so you can do it even faster and more accurately. And we'll have all those available, and you'll actually be able to get that interaction down even faster. Now, in terms of emulating to get the best results and optimizing what you can in a networking situation, you absolutely will need to be cognitive transitioning consistently. Now, if you're a member of this audience and you don't even know what cognitive transitions even mean, well, go to season 1, go to a playlist here on the YouTube channel, go to season 1 and look up or search on the search bar on the channel and look up cognitive transitions. There's a specific lecture for it. Watch it, and then also do 8 cognitive spectra while you're at it, so you just kind of understand how things work mechanically from that standpoint. But with the 4 sides of your mind, you're going to want to be bouncing back and forth between your subconscious and your ego and your unconscious, depending upon who the audience is. Because, if you're a pragmatic INTJ and whatnot, and it's like, well, not everyone is going to respond well to SE inferior's initiation. So, and if that's the case, you might need to have a wingman of some kind to help introduce you to people that are to introduce you to fellow SE users, etc., so that you can network with fellow SE users, because they're trying to initiate with you, or they're trying to give you a good experience, but your SI demon's just like, yeah, I'm not really interested in that. I want to tell you how I feel about this, or what I'm thinking here, or you should think about things differently. It's really important to bring someone who has perception functions that are different than yours as like a partner to go to like these networking events. That way you can bounce people back and forth between the both of you. Otherwise, if you're just there by yourself, you're going to have to rely on cognitive transitioning a lot, which can be very tiring, especially if you're an introvert. Not something I recommend. So bring another person with you, bring an SI user if you're an SE user, basically, and then kind of go bounce everyone between the two of you, and just make sure you have similar goals. You're kind of united with what you're trying to get out of the networking event, etc. And then as a result, your success rate will go way up as a result of doing that strategy.
All right. Perfect. I didn't miss any super chat. No, thank you, Mr. Neurotic Alpha, for your support. I appreciate you didn't want to ask a question. Thanks for the free money. My coin slot is very happy.
Very happy coin slot, yes.
It's very excited. Amazing. The greatest. Anyway, let's go to our next question. Are INTJs worried about other people's futures as well as with any nemesis?
Yes, they are. They're worried about the fates of others, for sure, and the fate of where we are going collectively. The collective unconscious is worrisome to the INTJ, and based on that, it's like, well, where is our culture going? Where is our society going? Where is this company going? Where is this XYZ group going? Where is this hospital going? Where is this van going? Where are we going? Where are we going together as a community? Where are we going together as a family? What is happening? You know, what do we have a plan? Is there a plan here? Do we really want that? What's actually happening? You know, are you sure you want that? Wow, that's our collective fate right now. That's not something I want. What if I want is something different than what y'all want? What about me? Do I get a choice? Right? That's where the any nemesis comes into play. And that's how I'd answer that question.
All right. What's the secondary virtue and vice of an INTJ?
The secondary virtue and vice of an INTJ, that would be sincerity versus insincerity through the ENTP unconscious.
Okay. So yeah, look at the ENTP unconscious as a verse. So look at the virtue and vice of ENTPs. That would essentially be the answer. Next question. Is there any specific sequence you enter other sides of your mind? If that's so, is there a preference? If that's not the case, do you enter the side that's strongest to deal with it, or the side that's best to deal with it?
It's really the side that's best to deal with it, quite frankly. It's not really about strength. It's about what applies in the moment, what's actually useful in a given scenario. And your mind instinctually knows, per se, based on the situation. However, remember, life is not about what is good or bad. Life is not about what is true or false. Life is about what is wise and what is not, right? And that's very important. Because just because your mind chooses to solve a problem with a particular, with your subconscious, but it may be wiser to use your unconscious, right? So as you get older and you gain wisdom, you'll actually be able to consciously decide what the best path is for a specific situation, or even wisely bring in a third party to assist you with their cognitive functions to actually be more applicable to the situation. Ask for help. It's never a bad thing to ask for help, because no one person's cognition is actually able to solve all of the problems, right? No one's cognition is able to solve all the problems. There's not really much, that can be said about that. There's not much that can be done about that, right? So just so be aware of the synergy that comes by bringing other people in to help solve problems in exchange for you obviously solving problems for them down the road. As Benjamin Franklin would say, if you meet a new neighbor, ask them for help because they're more likely to do you a kindness after you ask them for kindness, etc. It's the same kind of thinking.
Okay. Which types would like to have the same experiences over and over again, i.e. watch the same movie over and over?
Well, that's interesting. In their youth, that would be ENPs with their SI inferiors, absolutely. But that goes away as they get older because their SI becomes more developed over time. They're able to remember much, much more. So they end up not desiring to watch the same movies over and over again as often as they get older. Whereas if you were to look at NJs, it's the complete opposite. At first they don't necessarily want to watch the same movie over and over again, but then NJs just end up watching the same movie over and over and over and over and over because that SI trickster is there. It's not really remembering things, and it's like having a whole new experience every time to a point. And so that they're actually able to do that and watch them over and over again. It's especially true with ENJs. Really, my dad can watch the same movie, and I think one of his favorite movies is Mystery Men with Ben Stiller, and I swear he's watched that like 50 times, and I'm like, come on, I don't want to watch that again. Please stop. And of course, there's also Weird Al's UHF to throw that in there too, and also like watching Red Dwarf. I think I've seen every episode of Red Dwarf at least 6 or 7 times because of my father. So, and I mean literally every single one, and every Bond film about 9 or 10 times at least each one. So.
Yeah, my uncle's an ENTJ, and I could say he's watched every Bond film like at least 20 times. So
Yeah,
maybe you're
there
onto
you go.
something. You mentioned in one of your videos that there are many factors that determine the outcome of one's type. Why do you think the environment a child is raised in has such impact on a person's type?
I answered this question actually in the very first or the second Q&A session episodes that we did. But specifically for this, we're covering this in depth in season 17, where we're going to talk about quadras and how the quadra of a child causes a child to change their type basically within their quadra, depending on the situations. If there's good events or bad events in their life, if they're positive events, they get to move throughout their quadra. If it's a negative event, it freezes their position in the quadra, and then they end up stuck in the shadow basically during that traumatics period. And then if they're still frozen in that way when they're adolescents, well, they're stuck, and that part of their quadra is their ego after adolescence, and that just is what it is. When they come out of their shadow, that's just who they are, essentially. We'll be discussing that at length in season 17.
Right. Okay. ENFP subconscious / aspirational NE, and that amazing SI memory always saves me during social situations. SI reminds me of what has worked in the past and what doesn't work among certain friend groups. NE gives me rare moments of creativity that always comes out positive. How would you describe aspirational NE for ITJs?
Aspirational NE. Basically, it's metaphysical awareness, being aware of what is possible, and like, oh, I could create knowing what is possible, right? So it's possible I could do this. It's possible that people could do this, or anyone could do this or that. And like when they're doing like interior decorating or interior design, it's just more like constant experimenting. They're throwing something against the wall to see if it sticks, basically, and they
Right.
just do it over and over and over again. Oh, that's not going to work. Okay, take it down. Oh, that works great. Take it over here. That works great. Take it over there. Oh, that doesn't work. Take it down. And they're just doing that over and over and over and over and over again until they finally come up with like, oh, hey, yeah, that's what we want to do. That's how we're going to do it, etc. So that's how I would classify that for sure.
Okay. Can you do a series on functions and what each type can do with the least effort to further develop every given function?
So how to least effortfully develop every given function?
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much developing individual functions. We mostly focus on gateway development because by developing your gateway functions, your other functions that they're linked to through a cognitive axis are automatically developed as well by default. And then there's also cognitive orbit, which we will be doing a series upon very soon. I need to write that down because I had decided to do a series on that as well. I think my current lecture count right now, Jab, is about 1,300 plus. It's insane, but we got a lot of work to do. Anyway, based on that, yeah, I will be doing a series on it, but not in that way, basically.
Perfect. Um. Next question is: which types are most likely prone to take risks?
SPs, hardcore, especially with danger, physical danger, absolutely. And then after them, you could say NJs, NJs and SPs the most, with SPs being the utmost for sure. Especially
Okay.
STPs the absolute most, and NFJs.
All right. Well, we got another super chat from Mr. Aidan Weishnes, and he asks: people talk about the subconscious and unconscious out of context of type. The systems which run in the back of our mind and run our body. Are these the same as the four types in our head? Makes sense? Question mark.
Technically, yes, and I do not think the psychological community necessarily is labeling what they believe is the subconscious and the unconscious accurately, or maybe I'm not labeling them accurately. You see what I'm saying? Someone is not doing it accurately. I'm following the model as put forth by Sigmund Freud when it comes to talking about the different sides of the mind. And I'm taking a mixture of Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud to be able to present that model in terms of the four sides of the mind as a result of that. And as well as, I got to give credit to my INFJ mentor as well, who definitely had a huge impact in the four sides of the mind theory. And the process that learning what the process is called. It's called inversing, etc. But because that's what you do when you're switching from your ego to your subconscious. That's known as inversing. Well, guess what? Your unconscious can inverse into the demonic inverse, also known as the superfluous ego or the superego. But again, the names and labels that we have for the four sides of the mind, while they are subjective, they're not any more subjective than what the psychological community is labeling, the unconscious and subconscious and how they control the body, etc. And while I would like to believe that they're moderately the same, it's still very subjective, and we don't necessarily know in as much as they don't know themselves either. And yeah, so that's how I'd answer that.
Mm-hmm. All right, perfect. How does the etching on another person's work? Sorry. How does the etching on other person's open bracket in their core/soul work, and what function is the one doing it? Also, why does it have negative consequences for the one doing it if not given explicit permission?
They're talking about extroverted sensing etching on the soul of the SI user, and they're basically creating that SI user as to a totem, or they're storing their memories or shared experiences with that SI user. They are imprinting that SI user. You see this all the time with like ESTPs, like especially like ESTP men who are doing their nymphomania vice instead of their chastity of virtue, and they're trying to etch as many SI user women as possible, by having as many notches on their bedpost that they could possibly get, or as many names in their black books, etc. Because they're like doing permanent etching permanent memories, creating totems out of all these women basically, and all these shared experiences, all of them with all the variety thereof, etc. Now, while that is a negative aspect of that, it could also be very positive. The positive wise is like the SE user can always go to the SI user who had a shared experience together. It could be sexual or otherwise, it doesn't matter. And the SI user could always recall and remember those shared experiences. That way the SE user is like, oh, well, I'm valued, or they think highly of me because they remember that shared experience and I made a really positive impact on that person. Why is this important?
Mm-hmm.
It's because they're trying to create loyalty in the SI user. You want to give a good experience to the SI user because the SI user will remember all of the good things that you've ever done for them, and they'll also remember all of the bad things that you've ever done to them, because each of those things is an etching on their soul, basically, and they remember all of them. And as long as all of the good ones outweigh the bad ones, etc., guess what? The SI user is going to stay loyal to you, right? That's how it works. And SE users know that. That's why SE users are consistently trying to give other people a good experience. Not only that, they like to show off sometimes and be showy because they either value themselves or think there's some or other people value them based on giving other people a good experience. That's how it is to be. That's what it means to be an SE user, essentially. So yeah.
Okay. Aiden Wojcicki sent another message
Awesome.
with a
Thank
super
you, Aiden.
chat.
We love you, Aiden. You could be a patron on the Patreon. Just saying.
Okay, he asked, do the four sides of the mind use different parts of the brain physically?
Uh, we don't know yet. We're trying to recreate Dario Nardi's experiments so that we could actually do that. And I've been talking to a few neuroscientists to go over what that would look like and whether or not we could actually test for that to try to get some concrete evidence to go about doing that. We're still in process with that, and it's going to be a long time, probably, I'd say, before we actually have anything to share with anyone. But it is something we're working on. And if you are a neuroscientist and you're watching or listening on the podcast, by all means, give me your contact information and let's have those discussions. That would be very meaningful, and I think that would be a very big benefit to this audience as well as the science in general. Because anyway, any opportunity that we have to get concrete answers so that people realize that Jungian analytical psychology is not pseudoscience or it's nothing more than astrology or horoscope, then yeah, by all means, we could definitely do that. So yeah. So for sure, but I don't have anything concrete quite yet. So we'll find out, basically.
Okay. Going on to the next question. We didn't have another super chat. No. Beautiful. Okay, that next question is sorry.
Super chats popped up.
And 2 super chats. It feels weird not to transition into ESFP subconscious when with people. Transitioning back to ego repeatedly can be cumbersome. Advice: should I transition?
Yes, you should transition under 2 situations. 1, if you're making people uncomfortable, definitely transition. 2, if you are lacking in mental energy and you feel drained, definitely transition back to your ego, gain that introverted energy back, the introversion mental energy back, and then go again. For example, we were actually at the CSJ meetup in the Bay Area on Wednesday, and we had this INTP who showed up, and just mid conversation, we had a bunch of people at this table. There was about 10 people there, and he just like, "Hey guys, I gotta go," and we're like, "Well, you're leaving?" And he's like, no, I'll be right back. I just need to go. Like, okay, sure. He gets up and he walks outside of the restaurant that we were at. And he was just standing there. He had to introvert. He had to gain that mental energy. He just absolutely had to. And part of his, self-respect mode is that, hey, I need to have self-respect. I need to gain more energy. I need to spend time by myself now, basically. So he did, and we respected for him, and that's just what he needed, and he did that. But so if you need that mental energy, by all means, go back in your ego. Otherwise, hang out in your ESFP. If you're giving people a good experience and a good time, why not stay there? You know what I'm saying? And besides, it's really endearing to have that ESFP, like your own inner John Cleese, right, coming out, from an INTJ standpoint. You're probably the most hilarious person any of these people have ever met, which means you're etching their souls. They're going to permanently remember you. They're going to consider you. You are going to be in their thoughts, basically, for potential opportunities that are going to come out later, which may help you in business or relationships or who knows. It's always good to have connections with fellow human beings. You know what I mean? So definitely go in that direction, right? So, yeah, that's how I'd answer that.
All right. Well, we got another super chat from Aiden Wojcicki. Could a conversation formula be designed for anyone to talk with someone else and hit on all the necessary points to give the necessary information to type someone?
Yes.
And he said, I will join Patreon.
Yes, the answer is absolutely yes, and we're going to be creating infographics known as battle cards, conversational battle cards for specific human interactions of different social situations that we will be making available to patrons in the very near future. We're going to be starting that immediately following season 17's completion after we talk about cognitive axes, because there is a formula that you can use through typing people via cognitive axes to actually create like almost like a call script, like almost from a sales standpoint. And if you follow that script, you will be successful, basically, as long as you appear as authentic as possible. And it basically gives you all these battle cards for each of these social situations, be that sales, education, trying to get a date, etc., or maybe in a marriage or parenting, etc. You'll have all these interactions available, these infographic battle cards that you could just talk to these types. And as long as you're authentic, they will respond positively to you, and it will help. And they're going to be coming in like a form of rules that you have to follow for each type. And each rule basically provides, here's the do's and don'ts, etc. And but yes, you can actually formulate. There is a formula. You can actually formulate conversations based on that formula through cognitive axes to be able to meet the cognitive needs of somebody in a conversation to optimize the results of that human interaction. So yes, that is coming. And if you guys want to get in on those infographics, because they will not be released publicly, you got to become a patron to be able to get in on that. So yes, it's gonna be awesome.
Okay, Adam Wojtnis donated another $2 and asks, will my questions be cheaper if I join Patreon?
Yes, because you end up getting priority. So Aiden, when you join Patreon, and I think it's silver tier, correct me if I'm wrong, Jab, you get priority questions, which means you could just keep asking questions in the priority Q&A channel that we have in Discord for patrons, and those questions get automatically moved to the top because you're a monthly subscriber. Your questions are there. You just pay the monthly subscription level for that tier in Patreon, and you just go ahead and ask away, and then all of your questions are moved above other people in line, basically, just by default, essentially. And that's what that. So if you look on the screen right now, in the very center, you see that Patreon Q&A chat right there. That's where those questions are coming from. So when anyone asks questions in that window, we ask those questions basically because they get priority over the others, and that's how we're working it. So I think did I cover that right, Jeb?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've set a limit on it, but I'm sure if somebody decides to ask 10 questions in a row in the Patreon section, maybe we will set a limit per stream. But until that, I mean, shit, you've got free reign to spam questions in there, I think.
Yep. And also complain about the fact that my microphone is in front of the whiteboard.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, why not?
All right, next question. And if you're looking at the Platinum Q&A section on the widget, bottom left corner, Perry Arnie actually just said, have Aiden join me. I'm lonely.
Thanks, Perry. How much time we got in the show so far, Jab? I can't see the timer for it for some reason.
About an hour and a half.
Hour and a half. Okay, let me know when we get to an hour and 45 on that.
Beautiful. Okay, so Celestial. Ooh, one of my favorite ENTPs on the server.
Oh, Celestial. All right, let's hear it.
For people who have multiple personality disorder or borderline personality disorder, do all their personalities have to be in one of the four sides of their mind? Or can there be at least one other personality that has its own four sides of its mind?
Oh, that's a great question.
Sorry, I didn't finish. And how would we go about typing someone in these instances? Would you type each type individually?
So how would you go about typing that person? You still follow the type grid all the way through, but just remember, if you're in cognitive transition, the results of the type grid will be what the cognitive transition is, basically. The type grid, the type grid is 100% accurate. It's just, is the person in cognitive transition, or is the person being honest with themselves? That's really kind of the question. It really becomes an issue of human error, not the type grid being an issue, basically. As simple as we can get it.
We saw it when we typed John Cleese.
Yeah, we saw that. We typed it. That was a really hard one. I'm really glad you did that episode, Jab. It was great because we were seeing cognitive transition right there, and I know that you've been trying to come up with that for a while. So nice curveball there, buddy. So
we tried to Elon Musk smoking weed, but he didn't even inhale properly, so that was a bust.
Yeah, that was a bust. We tried, but we got it. We got it with the INTJ, not the INTP. So fair enough. But anyway, To answer the rest of that question, so I heard a story one time about the KGB doing experiments on people, psychological experiments on people in the 20th century, where they were torturing people in an attempt to produce a lot of trauma on various victims in order to try to extract different personas or personalities from people of up to 12 different personalities in a person, etc. It's like some kind of induced multiple personality disorder, etc. in their psychological study. I don't know if the story is even remotely true. I don't. But I've heard it from different people over the last 10 years. So it's got to be written down somewhere. I don't know if it's documented or if it's factual. I have no idea. But I'm just using that as an example. Why? Because when someone is fully cognitive transition in that side of the mind, it's kind of like for a few minutes, like that is appearing to be their ego. It's not their actual ego, but it's appearing to be their ego. And the other sides of the mind behave like their other actual sides of the mind. They're appearing as a subconscious, or they're appearing as an unconscious, they're appearing as a superfluous ego, etc. As a result. And obviously, they have their own interaction styles, they have their own quadra, they have their own cognitive axes, they have their own temperaments, right? So yes, you have to treat them each on a case-by-case basis. Now, in terms of borderline personality, or not borderline personality disorder, but multiple personality disorder, etc., in that specific disorder, the transition is so hard. It's so hard that they become active, basically, as their own egos. It's like having multiple egos in the same brain, basically, and moving so quickly behind them, and they're very solidified as egos, etc., instead of having the secondary traits or the tertiary traits of the subconscious versus unconscious, etc. And that's kind of the difference. Now, we don't have a lot of empirical evidence, and we don't have a lot of information about how that works. There'd have to be a lot more research done, but that's the current understanding right now. So we'd have to spend a little bit more time verifying that. But I don't have the resources for that right now. But that's definitely something that we could consider for the future when we're more funded and have the ability to extend our research to find the concrete answers to these questions that we have. So. But yeah, that's how I would answer that question, Jab.
All right. Well, we got a super chat from Liaz Sickness.
Oh,
50
Liaz.
Swedish krona. And he or she, I'm not sure of the gender. If there ever is a type that you cannot help but despise, no matter whom of said type you run into, it's not that type, it's you. So this is more of a statement, actually. Never mind.
It's more of a statement. Okay.
I'm not sure if he's making a statement to us or the audience, but whatever.
If there's ever a type that you would despise the most, it would be you looking in the mirror, basically, is what they're saying. That's their statement, right?
If there's ever a type that you just cannot help but despise, no matter who you run into of said type, if you despise that type just for being that type, it's not that type, it's you. That's what this person's saying. It's just a statement.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'd agree with that because every type is valuable. Every type is valid. Every type is very useful and is absolutely necessary. Just because there's more of them or less of them versus in others, then that's not a problem. And I get criticized consistently about my bad attitude towards NFPs or my bad attitude towards NFJs or my bad attitude towards basically every type, right? And everyone gets so butthurt and they think I'm singling them out, or they make assumptions like where it's like, oh, C.S. Joseph obviously had a bad experience, or oh, C.S. Joseph was obviously dating this person and this type of person and had a bad experience, so he's jaded now. No, that's not what it's about, actually. Like, I could care less. And you don't know anything about me, so, like, don't be jumping to conclusions like that. Like, seriously, that's very disrespectful and not accurate. Instead, realize that, for some reason in the MBTI or Jungian analytical psychology blogosphere, everyone is full of unicorns and rainbows and candy just falls out of their rears and no one did anything wrong. And no one's even talking about the flaws, and if they are, they're like really vague, and it's really frustrating. I'm not down for that. I'm not here to waste your time. I'm not here to waste my time. I'm not here to give anyone a good experience. I'm not here to make people comfortable. I'm here to tell the truth. Yes, thank you, Jeff. Yes, very true. Rant complete.
Well, you get real talk here. None of that horoscope shit you get on. Let's not name names.
Let's not name names. Let's not name names. Yep. Drop all the mics. I'm gonna drop the pen. Okay. Hopefully that helps. I'm not gonna drop that mic.
All right. Aiden Wojnis asked another $10 question. Typing a kid is a challenge. Is there a more reliable way to type them? And do kids grow through different sides of their mind as they age, eventually reaching their ego?
Ask that again. Trying to get my head around it.
So typing kids is a challenge. Is there a more reliable way to type them? Do kids grow through different sides of their minds as they age and then eventually reach their ego?
Yes. That's basically how it works. You start off in your quadra. So when I was born, I was in the SFJ NTP quadra. I was basically ISFJ. And then my sister was born, and she was an ESFJ. And I went NTP mode. I was an ENTP. And then trauma started happening to me personally as a little boy. And then I went into my INTJ shadow to try to cope with that. And I was in my INTJ shadow throughout my adolescence. And then when I came out of INTJ shadow, when the source of the trauma was gone and away from me, I became an ENTP, went back into my ego, basically. That's the entire process for that. Now, if people don't have that trauma, they could change in that quadra before they hit adolescence. Just when they hit adolescence, whichever side they are in at that time within their quadra, that becomes their ego, basically. I lost out due to trauma in my life the opportunity to explore the rest of my quadra. I could have been an ESFJ. I could have been an INTP, but I never got the opportunity to do so. That was stolen from me. Those opportunities were stolen from me because of the trauma in my life. And many children across the world all have that issue. So it's just something for us to be aware of. And we'll be covering that more in season 17.
Perfect. Asian Wojnis gave another $2 and said, I am the 30th patron.
Awesome.
Congrats,
Patron
bro.
number 30. Thank you, Aiden. Nice. We're hopefully going to have a like a little overlay thing that says, who's the new patron, etc., or who's the new subscriber and whatnot. We're definitely going to be upgrading here as we're attempting to be more professional. So as much as we can.
Absolutely. Okay, next question. It just popped into my mind. How and why is it that people with FI critic end up feeling worthless, but people with TI critic they are most logical?
Well, FI critic, they're very critical towards their own sense of self-worth, whereas a TI critic is very critical towards their sense of intelligence, their sense of what they know, basically. And that's why they force themselves to verify everything from a TI standpoint with logic. From an FI standpoint, people are forcing themselves to be good, and they're like overdoing the good, basically, and they're not even able to live up to their own standard of what they interpret as good, essentially, which makes them hypocrites. Well, same thing happens with TI critic as well. They hold themselves to such a high standard of thinking that they sometimes can't even reach that themselves, basically, in terms of their own accuracy, right? Because they have conflicting beliefs, or their belief systems may get in the way, right? So it's a different comparison between like TE parent and TI critic, right? So
beautiful. Sorry. Okay. Well, we're getting pretty good so far. We're about hour and 40 in, but still got plenty of time.
Yep.
You're going to be doing a series on parenting anytime soon. And if so, will you be talking about how certain types will parent their children and how their children can optimize their behavior in order to achieve the best possible result? Or will it be how parents should raise their children using the 16 personality type?
That's 2 separate series. We'll be doing both. That's 2 separate series. It's 32 lectures total between 2 separate series. Yes.
Ooh. Hi, Chase. I'm an INTP female, 18-year-old who's struggling to know what to do in university. I'm thinking of doing medicine, but my parents are pushing me to do law. I don't mind doing law, except that's not where I'm naturally skilled. What job is best suited for INTPs? Any tips and advice? Thank you for your time.
Between medicine and law, medicine is definitely a better approach, especially because it will help you engage your FE inferior to care and help for other people, and it will help you grow your ESFJ subconscious, whereas law, not so much. Law is more of an extroverted thinking approach, very rules oriented. It's not something I would recommend for an INTP when compared to medicine. My recommendation, definitely go in the medicine direction. Especially like I have INTPs in my life who are very, very good at like they're microbiologists, they're amazing scientists. They know the human body and how things work intrinsically and extrinsically with the human body, and they're able to solve complex health problems like that. And that genius of TI Hero is available right there. Their SI child remembers all the things, everything they've researched to be able to see the patterns in terms of how things go, and they've been able to make intuitive discoveries themselves, as well as extend the lives of fellow human beings which has been very rewarding for them. And you, as an INTP, would also be rewarded in that way. So if you were going to have to make the choice between the two, definitely go into medicine, for sure. I wish I had the money to afford that myself, to be honest.
Yeah, because he'd be paying for me to go.
That's right.
Okay, hi. Alan here. I'm a 23-year-old INTP. I live alone. I feel I don't deserve love to make myself feel like garbage. I only have 2 friends who struggle to get me out and are always making an effort, but now I feel I'm hopeless. I work and I play a lot of video games. I can't seem to find myself pretending to be something I'm not. My SE trickster is at the top, by the way. My TI hero is the reason I can't find somebody whom I like spending my time. But in the end, I feel like there is something wrong and broken inside of me. What would my fellow INTPs advise me to do?
Well, I'm not an INTP, so I couldn't technically answer that question, but I'm going to answer that question anyway. So, if you don't have a job, get a job. If you don't have your own place, get your own place. If you don't have your own transportation, okay, well, very good. At least he's got his own place. Yeah. Have self-respect. Have self-respect. Yeah. Watch season 4, season 6, and season 13 on this YouTube channel. And by the way, the final episode of season 13 is around the corner. What is the mature feminine? And that final archetype for the mature feminine is around the corner. But watch those 3 lecture series. And then also read Norm, Mr. Nice Guy, and read 12 Rules for Life, which was written by an INTP. Like, seriously. Yes, I'm saying Jordan Peterson is an INTP. Yes, he is. Like, that's not up for debate. Thank you very much. Like, come on. It's like, do I need to do a how to type episode on Jordan Peterson to like prove it to y'all that he is an INTP? He's an INTP. Like, seriously, come on. Anyway, so read those books, do that, and then do what they say. Make it your duty to do so. Otherwise, you're just going to get stuck in your comfort zone, and you shouldn't be stuck in your comfort zone. You're basically like debauched, quite frankly. Playing all those video games and doing nothing but, that's debauchery. Stop doing it. Just because you're not drinking alcohol doesn't mean it's not debauchery. It's debauchery. It's not healthy for you. I don't recommend it. Don't do it. So please watch those playlists on the YouTube channel, read those 2 books, and you're off to a good start for some positive change in your life. And maybe you could actually help your fellow man do the same. For sure.
Okay, next question comes from Jane Aru. And I'm assuming that's a she, as in Jane, female name. A message to the Lord Coin Operator Jappa.
Okay, this is all you, Jap. This is all you, man.
Whereabouts in Australia are you from? And would you do a meetup? I am currently in Melbourne, but I may be moving up north to Shepparton, and I doubt anyone's going to want to do a meetup in the sticks. So if I were to do a meetup in the future, it would have to be either really recently, which probably I can't be bothered organizing in time, or I'd have to train it down back to Melbourne sometime in the future. So I'd have to figure out who the hell wanted to come. I mean, show of hands, who's interested in coming to a Melbourne meetup for CSJ?
Never not. I'm going to be in Orlando the final 2 weeks of January during the weekdays, so we could do something there too while we're at it.
I mean, we could video call Chase and he can be there in spirit. Is that something you're going to do?
Yeah, I mean, why not?
Yeah. So we could do it with Chase.
Yeah, just make me show up on the Zoom, just like throw me on a laptop. Hi, guys.
Hey, guys.
Hey, guys. Hello, Governor.
Chase from CS Joseph here.
Yeah. All right, next question.
All right, next question. Do you think it's possible to integrate strong correlated Big Five scales with Jungian MBTI scales? Published research exists on PubMed. I know your opinion about the nature-nurture side. I've seen about 75% of your videos, but I can't ignore Big Five because of factor analysis. Also, it makes use of language that is more accessible to people that aren't familiar with Jungian terminology.
I mean, quite frankly, the Big Five would just be a gateway drug into the deeper Jungian approach, and that's how I would classify it. It's just a gateway drug, in as much as like Enneagram would be as well. But I don't spend as much time on Enneagram or Big Five as a result. I mean, they are tools that people do find useful, in as much as people find the DISC system useful, which the DISC system is just interaction styles, quite frankly. But sure, otherwise, that's all it is. It's just a gateway drug to get into Jungian analytical psychology, quite frankly, and that's kind of how I treat it. So.
Ooh. Well, we got one person who's in Bendigo who said they'd be happy to help organise a meetup. So, yeah, I mean, if you're in Melbourne, just hit me up with a DM on the Discord, PM me or something, and I'll see what I can organise.
Awesome. How much time we got into the show so far, Jeb?
Oh, we just hit hour and 46.
All right, cool. Let's take a couple more questions. I have another question that was submitted to me that I would like to get to, but I'll save that question for last. So, by all means.
All right. Do INFPs have some kind of predisposition to have depression? Out of the 7 INFPs I know, 5 of them, me included, have had some degree of depression at some point in their life. And to be fair, I am not that close to the other 2, so they could also have it.
I maintain depression is not so much a human nature thing as much as it is a human nurture thing. Like, for example, people of all types get depressed. They just get depressed for different reasons, but it's usually due to external factors and not internal factors. And those external factors could, possibly include the fact that our currency continues to being devalued. Back when only one adult had to work for a household, now we have require 2.5 adults to work to be able to pay for a household nowadays, because everything is so expensive. Cue up that guy that used to run for president screaming out, "The rent is too damn high." You know what I'm saying?
The rent is too damn high.
Yeah, it's just come on, man. Okay, but yeah, it's not human nature only. Depression affects everybody. It just affects everybody in different ways. So being that depression affects people, what their type is, how type comes into it, how human nature plays into it. It's just the depression has different results, and they approach depression differently. That's all it is, basically. Otherwise, there's no one type that's more predisposed to depression than the others. However, given that society, there are some natures that are more common than others. based on that, you could say that because some of the rare types, especially the introverted intuitive types like INFPs, INTPs, INFJs, INTJs, or at least the rarest of the types, would be considered, more depressed than the others, specifically because they are a minority. You could make that argument as well. But we don't have any specific statistics or data to back that up at this time. So we'll table that question for the concrete answers that we're trying to seek as a community to get that figured out as the data becomes available to us as we move forward. So yeah, definitely.
Oh, by the way, the question you said you were waiting until last, is that Perry Arnie's in the Platinum Q&A, or do you want me to ask that?
No, let's ask that right now.
All right. Perry Arnie asks, any role models for ESFPs off the top of your head? And by role models, I mean developing ESFPs parts of their mind.
So, role models. I would say it depends on what you want to do as an ESFP. If you're going to do something athletic, get an athletic role model, specifically like an SJ related athletic role model, or get a fellow ESFP or a fellow SFP, like an ISFP as well, and force yourself to be around them, even if you don't like them, even if you think they're better than you, or you're better than them, but you can still learn something of value from them. But yeah, just depending on which area that you're looking to do some personal growth in, find an SJ who is as subconscious developed as you are, basically, because Periani, ESFP, very well developed, INTJ subconscious. If you're going to hang out with an ESTJ, you'd want to make sure their INFP subconscious is very developed. But then they start teaching you philosophy at that point, and maybe that's not your goal. So you want to go for something that would fit your goal. Potentially an ISFJ who's really well developed with their ENTP subconscious, and then you can have those intellectual discussions with them and grow intellectually. Sure, but it just really depends what application you're going for, what direction you want to take it, and then as a result of that, are they as conscious as they are? Are they as developed as you are mentally, or even more so? Preferably go for the more so. And then if you really want to increase the amount of conflict for the sake of better results, go look at fellow SFPs, maybe even STPs to a point, for sure, in that direction. That would be my basic recommendation as to how to answer that question, for sure.
Okay. So, perfect. Woo. Do you have any other? No? Any super chat? Oh, Adam Voiceness. We almost missed this one. Okay, last cue. You're building an app. What is it for?
So I talk about that in my patron thank you lecture. I did a video for Patreon. After you become a patron, you get to watch a thank you lecture that actually says how we're going to accomplish our vision of destroying fatherlessness and optimizing all human interactions, etc. And in this thank you video, I talk about various technologies that the CSJ community and this company is going to be developing to actually help make that happen, including various mobile applications. So I recommend watching that thank you vid because that explains those things. But we're going to be doing apps that help people type themselves and others. We're going to be doing some things with dating, education, parenting, as well as sales, HR things with like recruiting as well, and medical. We're going to be making huge technological advancements using Jungian analytical psychology to optimize the human interactions people have in all of these sectors within human life, basically, to give people a better, higher quality of life, essentially. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing, Jab. But like, you knew that already.
Oh yeah. All right. Next question comes from an INFJ cultist. I understand many people love animals, but there is a function. But is there a function that can draw a person's attraction to animals to a higher degree?
Well,
what?
I mean, FE users around animals are like, "Oh, it's so cute. I want to save the animals." And most veterinarians are FE users, quite frankly. But people can make the argument that's FE. I could make the argument it's FI as well. I mean, I remember this guy, his name is Vince Draken, and he's a veterinarian in real life, and he's an FI inferior because he's an ESTJ, and he likes to be, saving camels in the UAE for some reason. But, it really comes down to, them establishing that emotional connection. I don't think it has anything to do necessarily as much with perceiving functions as much as it has to do with decision-making functions when it comes to animals, because you always get that FE user when it comes to being in the presence of animals and whatnot. But it just really depends. I think that's more of a nurtural related answer than a nature related answer, quite frankly.
Okay, next question. As Joseph said in his video, how do ESFPs compare to ENFPs? I sometimes be an ESFP and gather back to be ENFP. Hence was checked that someone... What? Hold on. Bear with me. This is a mouthful.
A mouthful.
As Joseph said in his video, how do ESFPs compare to ENFPs? I sometimes be an ESFP and gather back to be ENFP. Hence was checked that someone used black magic curse. You can find it on YouTube. People was talking about it very much to me, so sometimes I cannot know my type. So I think what this person is saying is that somebody's using black magic on him, so he can't determine his type.
I am not an expert in the occult or voodoo, so I am not qualified to answer that question at this time.
Okay.
So how much time we got left, Jab, for the 2-hour mark?
About another 5.5 minutes.
All right. Let's do one more question, then we're going to do the final question. How about that?
All right. Are you still planning to do video about INFJ plus ENTP? You promised it 4 months ago to YouTuber Francesca C.
Yes, I will be making that lecture. It is coming. And all the lectures that I've promised, they're all in the schedule. They are coming. Patience, please. Yes, I will be doing INFJ plus ENTP. It will be a very interesting relationship video when the time comes. I'm very much looking forward to it. But before that, we got to get past season 14, which is the highest compatibility type comparisons, which will be very romantically involved, we'll say, with season 14. Oh my! I will be wearing my George Takei mask while I am doing it. So we'll see how that goes. Right. All right, cool. My nose is itching like crazy right now. Gosh.
Fair enough, dude.
All right, so are we ready for the final question? So, okay, we're going to do the final question now. How do you feel technological advancements in artificial intelligence will change or enhance cognitive functions and our interaction with them in the next 20 years or so? Very fun question. I wanted to save it for last. Have you ever played the game Halo? I played Halo a lot. I played Halo on the Xbox. Like, that's what everyone does. They play it on Xbox. Although I did play it on PC for a while. And I have this problem where, because I'm left-handed, right? But I play the controller, and I like to have my controller inverted, right? So I'm playing inverted, which means, you pull the joystick down, and you got the gun, and you're looking up, basically. Or if standard is like you just press up, and then you're looking up, right? Or if it's the other way, you just press up, and then you're looking down, from an inverted standpoint. And then over time, I actually could train my mind to be okay with me switching between the two of them, between standard and inverted. I would just use self-discipline and force myself to do the inversion or non-inversion when I'm playing Halo on the Xbox. Why is this relevant to answering this question? Because it has to do with the frames per second of the cognitive functions. So season 1, I did an episode called The 8 Cognitive Spectra. And frames per second is very important. you can downshift, and I'm going to be doing a lecture series on this or on cognitive functions. You can downshift and upshift cognitive functions depending on your cognitive transitions, whereas you could get a higher function to potentially behave as a lower function as a form of emulation. It's a different kind of emulation that I talked about. Instead of using some functions together to produce an emulated form of another function, you can actually downshift through emulation one of your functions into a weaker version of itself to kind of pretend to be like, a hero pretending to be a critic, basically. You know what I'm saying? Something like that. Well, technological advancements. Let's talk about like some cyberpunk here, like from a cybernetic standpoint, more closer to the transhumanist singularity approach. When singularity comes, I absolutely maintain that by then, this technology will be well developed, that we can understand specifically where the cognitive functions exist within the central nervous system and the human brain, such that we could use cybernetic enhancements to be able to increase the frames per second or the awareness of any of our cognitive functions potentially. I don't know how that would work, and I'm not entirely sure if that would like induce psychosis or some other horrible mental approaches. But I mean, if our consciousness is literally a machine at that point, because it may necessarily be code, then sure, okay, that's different. But then again, I'm not entirely sure I would want to live my life as a piece of code either, because like if you watch that show on Netflix known as Altered Carbon, and like if you have Netflix and you haven't watched that show Altered Carbon, like what are you doing with your life? Maybe like everyone should watch Altered Carbon. It's a dope show, because it's this whole premise in Altered Carbon where if someone dies, their consciousness is stored in like this little hard drive thing called a stack, and they can just be put into a new body, rebooted, and then they're back in that new body again. And effectively, humankind is immortal. However, if you're natural born and you don't have a stack yet, they kind of have to kill you to put your consciousness in that stack so you could be reborn over and over and over and over again. The problem is that the neo-Catholics of the story can make the argument, basically. They can make the argument that, when you die for the very first time before your consciousness is moved into the stack, basically, that essentially means you're dead. And that what consciousness lives in the stack is actually a machine, but not a real person. They just happen to be in a human body, behaving and acting the same way as you. So is that actually real? Right? Is that actually a real soul? Is that actually a real person? Did they not just die the first time? You can even make the same argument from a cyberpunk video game known as EVE Online, where you're actually transferring consciousness, your consciousness between different clones, etc., within the construct of this game. So from an AI standpoint, where does that fit in? So technological advancements, sure, yeah, we'll be able to cybernetically enhance our brains if we know where the cognitive functions and the different sides of our mind and all of our cognition as a whole is within our central nervous system and our brains. Absolutely, we'll be able to do some enhancement and have some mental enhancement. But what about artificial intelligence? I maintain that what we're doing right now with depth psychology and studying the science and moving the science forward together as the CSJ community, that we're actually finally giving AI programmers what they need to actually create actual intelligence, actual standalone sentient artificial intelligence, because right now people that are coding artificial intelligence are not coding with cognitive functions in mind. It's really frustrating, right? Instead, they like to do this linear or multilinear programming, and they're trying to program feelings when instead they don't understand cognitive axis. They don't understand cognitive spectra. They don't understand frames per second and how it changes how a person feels or how they think or how they make decisions or what makes them happy, etc. Those kinds of things. If those people who are trying to create sentient AI would program based on utilizing the human mind or the human soul as a model, basically, when they're, doing an artificial intelligence approach, they might be more successful, right? But of course, I don't want them to be, because I'm not a transhumanist. I'm not really pro mankind becoming immortal one day because of the demon function. If we solve the problem of the demon function, sure, okay, yeah, be immortal. I'm cool with that. But until the demon function situation is solved, not necessarily an issue, because if I'm trying to reach immortality, up to, the highest heights of heaven, well, then my roots are definitely going down to the depths of hell at that point. Not exactly ideal. If you haven't watched season 16, episode 8 yet, and you're a member of this audience, like, what are you doing? Go watch that episode, because I explain this more in detail. The presence of the demon function is definitely not something that I want to live with if there's a situation where we have artificial intelligence, and because we have artificial intelligence and sentient artificial intelligence, the next level above that is literally immortality via technology, which is the number one product of singularity, as the transhumanist movement would say. So what does all of this mean? It means that as a result of us developing the science, we are giving mankind the tools to finish sentient AI. And then once mankind finishes sentient AI, because of the knowledge gained of how to create sentient AI and accurate sentient AI, then we've just given mankind the tools, everything that they need to complete immortality via technology for mankind. And quite frankly, based on the law of accelerated returns, according to Ray Kurzweil, who is the leader of the transhumanist movement and did write Singularity, I maintain, there's a very good chance that our race will actually be able to obtain that this century. And it's all as a result of these technological advancements that we are going to be making as this community, potentially, and moving forward Jungian analytical psychology and making it a regular part of life in as much as developing it as a technology. And yes, those cybernetic enhancements will come. Potentially our hero function will become even greater. Who knows? Who knows if that'll lead to psychosis? I mean, like that anime Psychopaths, you know what I'm saying? Like, who knows what's going to happen? We just don't know. It's a huge unknown world. It's that brave new world. And it's something that we have to be careful because we're literally playing with fire. I talk about this in the demon function episode. Knowledge needs to have proper containment. If it's not contained properly, nuclear power or nuclear energy is literally turned into nuclear weapons. You see what I'm saying? Very explosive. Mass murder. Is that something that we want to have on our conscience? Is that something that we want to do as a race? Not necessarily, right? No, we don't, right? That's bad. Don't do that. So what do? It's just, it's important to understand that as we develop the science, that we recognize that we ourselves have a responsibility to our race, to our species, basically, to make sure that we have proper containment, to make things are tested appropriately, so that we do not create these, huge technological faux pas that ends up costing, millions and potentially billions of lives down the road, because knowledge that is uncontained can literally do that. And that's something that we need to avoid as a species and as a race, etc. So that's how I would answer that question. Technological advancements and AI definitely could impact the cognitive functions. I fully expect them to. And while I'm developing the science and developing these technologies, and I know for a fact that they could be going in that direction, I also maintain it's 100% inevitable. It's inevitable. This will happen. Someone would have come up with the same ideas because of expert intuition, because of the collective unconscious. Someone would have came up with the same ideas that I have and have been able to develop those technologies on their own just fine. And then it would have brought that sentient AI, which would have brought immortality via technology to our race, and it would have happened regardless. So it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to do it myself because hopefully I could be that guiding hand to get mankind thinking about these technologies and using them more responsibly instead of irresponsibly. I don't want to find myself one day being like Mr. Oppenheimer giving a speech, I have become death, the destroyer of worlds. Whereas at that point, it's like I've become death, the destroyer of freedom. Mm-hmm. Why? Because if whoever controls that immortality technology, as many of these people in this audience have fear of death, right? Well, guess what? They literally rule the world, and the world becomes a slave world at that point. There is no freedom. With death, there's freedom. Because as Charlie Chaplin put it in his speech, The Great Dictator, so long as men die, the people will always be free. When men die, the power is returned back to the people. That's why people will always be free in the end, because men die. But if you take away a man's ability to die, well, that freedom ain't going to go anywhere. That's a problem. And that's one of the main risks of immortality via technology, the main risk of sentient AI, the main risk of further developing Jungian analytical psychology and developing these technologies, because that is where it is eventually inevitably going to lead, basically. So that's how I'd answer that question. So how you doing, Jab? It's nice way to end it.
Very good. Yeah, we've passed 2 hours now, so
awesome.
Hashtag 2-hour stream.
2-hour stream again with itchy nose, flickering lights because it's a rainstorm outside. Hopefully we'll get that figured out. And awesome. Are we good to go, Jab? Are we good?
Yeah, let's do one last check to see if there's any more platinum questions. Looks good. Platinum Q&A. Yeah, looks like we're good.
All right, awesome. Thank you all for coming to our Q&A session. Hopefully we'll get the other overlays figured out. And thank you for those of you who have signed up on our Patreon during the show. It's great to have you on board. We got more content coming out for you. And just keep it coming, and we'll keep it coming. And thank you for being such a fantastic audience and being committed to help us as a community change the world for the better and bring a better tomorrow. With that being said, we'll see you guys on our next stream Tuesday night about 9 Eastern for our How to Type episode. And so, yeah, we'll see you then. Have a good night.
See you, lads and ladies.